So we made plans to chat today about death. Just
Yes,
started off really blunt. Um, and Emily, do you want to give a little bit of information about what you do?
sure. Yeah, a little over a year ago, I started a business called Plan Big Sleep, where I help people plan, document, organize everything that they want to happen before, during, and after their death. So, kind of like when you go get your will done, but I think of it more on the emotional side, where we're taking like all the legal stuff and adding more things to it. So, think about things like when you think of your funeral, what do you want that to be like? What kind of music do you want? Do you want to be wearing a certain outfit? Do you even want a funeral at all? You might not want that. Um, and then even before that, so like if you're kind of terminally ill or not doing well and you're kind of bedridden, what do you want that environment to be like? Do you want to be at home? Do you want certain blankets with you? Do you want your pets with you? Do you want nobody visiting you at all? Yeah, so just kind of I basically sit with clients for 2 1-hour sessions on average, and we have a bunch of questions that we go through. So it's kind of like an interview, but not super formal. And we just talk about different scenarios, and I get to know them and their relationship with death and dying for themselves. And I take a bunch of notes. And then I put together kind of an organized document that can be shared with their family or friends to explain what it is that they want. So when they do die, it's not kind of left to the people to figure things out and make assumptions and stress during a time when they should be able to grieve.
That's amazing.
In a nutshell.
I have so many questions, which is why, you know, and just to back up, I'm Kristen Euretig, founder of Brooklyn Plans, and we work with millennial, largely women clients, and allies and couples. But the topic is very resonant and salient for the clients that we work with for two reasons, because our clients are now entering this like sandwich generation where they're starting families or raising families or have chosen not to and are, going their own path, which we see, a lot of. It's not that there's one way to do it, but for those that have gone that way of having families, their parents are also aging. So they
Mhm.
have like these two sides of caretaking. So for our clients, it's like they're doing estate planning for themselves because they have kids, so it's a consideration for them, but also they have parents that are aging and don't have these, people don't have these conversations. And it's funny
Mhm.
because the reason why we decided to have a conversation rather than what the original plan was to do a blog post was because there's so much to talk about, and then when we were talking about when to have it, we couldn't figure out when like a good time to talk about death was.
Mhm.
And because we're going into the holidays, and I was, there's certain things that there's like never a good time or never a right time. And I
Mhm.
think what's like interesting about death is that you don't know when it's coming, but like it's coming for all of us. Whereas
Yes.
like it reminds me when you were talking, it reminds me of the process of like a birth doula of like, do you want visitors after, you have a baby? How do you want that to be? Do you want a playlist? These things that you don't think about because birth is also a huge, life experience.
Mhm.
But with debt, but like, you have a due date. So there's this pressure. You're like, I have to get it together. Do I want a doula? Like, what do I want to do? How do I feel about an epidural? You have all these questions that you sort of have to tackle within this like 9 month window.
Mhm.
Whereas death is something that you can just like put off because it's like, oh, it's coming, but who knows? So it's
Right.
like, yeah, so I guess we just thought it would be good to put our heads together because my clients have a lot of issues around this and communicating with their parents and in thinking about their own wishes. And since you tend to talk more to the sort of like parents
Mhm.
side, I thought you might help like illuminate for our clients how to go about having these conversations. So let's start there. Like, what do you see in the clientele that you work with? And maybe you can tell a little bit more about who you work with or target, or who's sort of most sort of primed for this type of work. And what you're seeing in terms of like their willingness to engage, what works for them, what we might be doing sort of wrong to connect with like an older generation. I think that would be helpful to sort of unpack.
Yeah, for sure. I have worked with clients that are like in their 60s and 70s. And I think that that's like when you think of death planning, what you typically default to thinking about. But I don't necessarily think that's like the only people that should be doing death planning. So I think everyone should have a death plan, like even if you're a teenager, because I think as soon as you have thoughts and opinions on things, like you should be talking about that with whoever is going to be in charge of handling to make decisions. Um, so yeah, like for me, it's like everybody should be talking about this. And I don't necessarily think that everyone needs to sit down with me for 2, 3 hours and like write out these extensive death plans. But I think at least sitting down with your whoever would, if you were to die tomorrow, think about who would be in charge of planning things for you and just have a conversation with them. Maybe take them out for a coffee, buy them a drink, whatever it is that you usually do together. Um, and just kind of like go through the top things that are important to you. So like religion, like do you want religion involved or not? What do you want to happen to your body? Um, yeah, these like very, very important things that are often defaulted to our family. Sometimes you don't even want your family. So that's another thing, especially with the LGBTQIA community. I did a whole section on
Mm,
this
mm,
um, during Pride Month. If you're estranged from your family, if they don't have the same beliefs that you have, if they don't support you and who you are, you can fill out paperwork that doesn't allow them to make decisions for you if you were to die or if you were to not
mm.
be able to make decisions for yourself. Um, yeah, so I'm going a bit off topic on on all the things that I think
There's
are
just
really
so much
important
to
about
talk
it.
about.
I
Yeah.
know. But yeah, as far as like the like bringing the topic up and the clients that I see, I think one common thing that I'm seeing is often one part of the family is willing to talk about death and dying and the other isn't. So what I mean by that is like maybe the parents are willing to start discussing this topic, but the kids feel uncomfortable with it because they don't want to think about their parents dying yet.
Of course.
Or it's the other way around, where the kids are like, my parents are getting older. I have no idea what they want. I don't know what's going on with their financial situation. And the parents are
Mhm.
like, I'm not talking about this with my kids. So there's like this miss there between the two. And I see that quite often. So yeah, I think that's the hardest part. And things that I recommend for that are just like trying to bring things up in a less serious tone. So maybe you've watched a show recently or a
Mhm.
movie, either with your
Mhm.
parents or without, and you kind of just say, like, hey, I was doing this thing and they talked about death and dying, or like somebody accidentally died and like this happened and it got me thinking about something. Or
Mm.
as you said with the birth thing, I think that's a great example. Just like they have birth doulas, they have death doulas as well. So maybe that's your way of talking about it. Like, my friend is hiring a birth doula, and did you know that they have death doulas and like they help you figure out what you want when you die? So just kind of easing into it, I think can be helpful. I've done a few podcasts in the past, so I think also like even just saying I listened to this podcast with this girl who talks about death and like
Mhm.
it got me thinking about it. Um, yeah, I think those are kind of like high level ideas. I mean, obviously you're gonna know your people a lot better than I will and like what works and what doesn't. Um, yeah.
I like that. So rather than sort of like, hey, mom or dad, we have to have a very serious conversation about what's going to happen when you die. It's like I think that's one of the hardest things is just like how do you A, bring it up, and
Hmm.
then B, have the conversation and I guess see in no particular order is just like the resistance you might be met with. But I like
Yeah.
that idea of kind of like um watching a movie and being like, God, I would never want to be cremated, like even making it about yourself. Like, I
Hmm.
wouldn't want, would you want that? Like just sort of
Yeah.
in more context.
Hmm.
Um and making it maybe a bit lighter instead of like, we need to have this like very sad, serious conversation. Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
but it seems like,
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say also not just around the death and dying, but like I'm sure, I mean, I'm assuming with your clients you sometimes talk about like planning for after retirement and what you're gonna do when you're living and you don't have an income necessarily anymore, and how do you pay for that and how do you plan for that? Um, I think that's also like that's like the beginning of the topic for if you're talking to your parents is like do you have money saved for this? And like, what happens if you don't? And like, are you going to come live with me and my husband? And are we supposed to take care of you? And what happens if you can't go to the bathroom by yourself? Like, just kind of thinking
Mhm.
about all these scenarios and maybe like, what are you as the millennial child, I'll bucket it there, willing to do versus not willing to do? And like, whatever you're not willing to do, like, those conversations should definitely be had ahead of time,
Mm.
if possible.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, because I mean, I think it's a good entree too. If clients can talk to parents, say, listen, I'm working with a financial planner. We're doing retirement planning, we're doing projections, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around, and I just really have no idea because, I'll ask my clients things because they'll talk about how their parents might need support in their old
Hmm.
age. And I'll say, do they have disability insurance? Don't know. Do they have long-term care? Don't know. Have they considered like what how to use their assets in order to qualify for Medicaid, for which is, yes, a whole topic in and of itself, but basically there's a very straightforward way to protect assets from being drained in the event that you need, live full-time care, if you need to be in a residence that offers full-time care. And it's very avoidable, but without the knowledge, a lot of people miss the opportunity to protect assets from this situation where they're being drained in order to qualify for a plan that would cover it at lower asset levels. So that's a very short version, but things like that, like, have your parents done estate planning? Do they have, don't know. And I think that that's to some extent, I don't know how I feel about it. Fine when it comes to inheritances, because like I don't like to plan on an inheritance coming in because you don't know. I just don't trust other sources. Like if you're like, oh yeah, my
Hmm.
mom said they're going to give me $1 million, but what if they need memory care or, whatever it may be, and they go through that money, and even if they have the best of intentions, it's not there. So I don't like to plan on an inheritance, but if my clients are going to have to support another person or people, that's very important to include in the financial plan and to have a
Yeah.
sense of like what the scope of that support would be or what those numbers would look like. That can really move the needle on whether someone's on track or not. So I feel like those conversations are almost more important than like, hey, how much am I going to get? Not that
Right.
not that that's what people's motive is, but that can come off
Hmm.
wrong for lots of reasons, and it's very loaded. And at the end of the day, for financial planning, I don't really care because I'm pretending that you're getting zero until it's in your bank, in your name, in your bank account.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that also reminded me of just like, I mean, discussing wishes with, I'll just keep going with the example of people in their 30s and 40s talking to their parents who are getting older. Um, your parents might say like, I want the best casket, I want to be buried here, I want a huge memorial, and funerals are really, really expensive. So that's another thing that you should be discussing with them is like, are they setting aside money for this or are you supposed to pay for it? And yeah, it can get quite messy quite quickly. And yeah, I think just having these conversations ahead of time clears a lot of things up, like reduces a lot of drama within the family that can come. Yeah. And I think another thing that I thought of when you were talking is a trigger that often brings up this topic of death planning is when somebody else dies. So a lot of the clients that I have that
Mm-hmm.
decide to do death planning, especially early on, is because they had to manage and plan all this stuff last minute and they realize how hard it was. And
Yeah.
they don't want other people to have to do that on their behalf. And so that triggers it really. That's probably the most common reason that I have people do it.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think leveraging that, if you don't have that in your life, leveraging that as an example of just saying like my friend at work's mom just died unexpectedly and she's telling me all this stuff she has to do and like I don't want to have to do that last minute. Can we talk about this? And we
Yeah.
can chip away at it slowly. It doesn't have to be a big, heavy thing. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I like the idea that like it's just a conversation. It's not like, well, what do you want with this? And what it's not a checklist, right? It's
Hmm.
just like approaching it first as like kind of like, well, what are your thoughts about it? Like, what do you envision? Kind of more like big picture as opposed to like strategy and lists is like getting a vibe, getting a sense of like where the person is with it, how open or not they are, like that
Hmm.
seems like a good first way to sort of enter into the topic. And those like logistics and lists might come down the line, but it's like it's probably going to be a series of conversations, right? And it has to
Yeah.
sort of open a door to like communication around this topic. And that
Hmm.
might take time and it might build, there might be more trust or more goodwill there over time to like get more specific. But when you think about it like that, it's like, when's a good time to talk about death? Like yesterday, right? Because
Hmm.
you need to start like kind of creaking that door open because
Yeah.
it's so uncomfortable for everyone, right? It's like nobody's super comfortable except maybe you, but
Yeah. But I still get it. Like I get that it's uncomfortable. Like,
of course.
yeah. I mean, and there's so many different ways of doing it, and there's so many people out there coming up with different ways. Like there's a organization that does what I think they're called the death deck. And it's like a card game with different questions and scenarios that you can play and it prompts these questions that can kind of
Oh,
give you like, and then it's not on you to ask the questions. It's like, oh, well, the card is asking this question. So I think that's a really unique way to do it. So you could also think about like whoever you're trying to do this planning for or with, like what is their personality type? Do they like to sit down and like have a checklist? Because there's plenty of checklists that you could go through. There's boxes you can buy that have files and folders that you can kind of put everything in and then store that. There's the
mm,
death deck. There's people like me who sit down and do one-on-one interviews. So it just kind of there's so many different options. Um, which I realize like I know a lot about this because I'm in this field and I'm like in
yeah.
it every day and doing the research and seeing stuff. But yeah, and I think that's another like reason why it interests me was because I mean I didn't explain why I got into this, but my mom, she passed away 5.5 years ago and she had cancer that spread. And so we kind of knew that she was going to die. So that like you said with the birth example, like we knew we had a certain amount of time to kind of ask her some questions and get some things figured out. So we were able to do that. And she had a death doula. That's kind of what introduced me to death doulas, and that's kind of what triggered me into like figuring all this out and being interested in it. But yeah, I think death and grief and loss is such an uncomfortable topic for so many people, and I would love to try to make it a bit more comfortable and like for people to be able to hold space more because there's so many people who are affected by it that then are they feel shut out because other people don't know how to talk to them about it, don't know how to ask questions, they feel uncomfortable, so they just kind of avoid it. And yeah, I would love if we could not make it so so taboo, I guess. Because as you said, it's happening to all of us. There's no
Yeah.
getting around it.
And I'm thinking as you're talking, like a lot of what we do is a lot of overlap, right? Because that's the work that we're doing in the finance space is like having people talk about it, open up about it, get support with it, provide resources and tools because it's just this kind of opaque subject
Hmm.
matter that people have, for many reasons, like institutional and otherwise, have a hard time accessing. So we're, a lot of times illuminating, shining a spotlight on this area of people's lives. And similar to death, like we all have to deal with money and these things that we have in common. It's interesting that they're the hardest topics to
Hmm.
tackle because we are one thing that every single person on this planet has in common is that we're all going to die. And yet
Hmm.
we can't talk about it. Like
Hmm.
it's so, and I think particularly in our culture, like I think other cultures have a more healthier, like connected relationship to death, but
Yeah, for sure.
um and others have, perhaps a worse, culture or less open, communication about it than we do. Because I think there's definitely forces that are trying to change the closed nature of certain topics in this country and with newer generations opening things up that weren't before. So there's definitely like a lot of hope there for it getting to be more sort of palatable.
Hmm.
Um, but I wanted to ask you, what trends are you seeing in terms of death planning? Like, there's lots of ways. I guess I'm thinking more about like the funeral or the celebration of life but I mean, what have you sort of seen that's like kind of new or different or changing?
Hmm. Um, well, I'll back up a little. When I started this, my kind of original idea for it was very much tied to my mom because she was very specific on what she wanted. And so I was like, in my mind, I was like, well, everybody must really care about what happens before, during, and after they die. So we should document this. And then the more and more clients I had, the more I realized a lot of people don't really care.
Mm.
They just don't want to burden others.
Oh,
And
okay.
so they're doing this as like, I'm gonna organize this stuff and like say some ideas of what I want, just so that other people don't have to figure things out and make decisions when they shouldn't have to.
Okay.
So that was kind of interesting for me because then I was like, okay, maybe, and I'm that way. Like, I'm like, I'm gonna be dead. Like, do I really care what happens? Like, probably not, but
Hmm.
can I give some guidance so that people aren't like arguing about what to do with me? Um, and I think another thing is just how many people like wanted the funeral or memorial afterwards party to be a happy celebration and not sad. And I think typically when we think of funerals, you think of like a rainy day and everybody's in black and they're crying and it's just really sad. But I think I've only had one client who wanted everybody crying, and she very specifically put that in her death plan. Like, I want everybody to be very sad. But everybody else is like, I want you to be happy. I want everyone to share good memories. Like, I don't want this to be like a depressing day.
Like
So that was kind of
control from beyond the grave. The guilt trip
exactly,
continues after death.
exactly,
Um,
exactly.
but hey, I mean,
Um,
at least, everyone's clear about what you want.
exactly. And that I think that's very helpful because then people know, okay, like she wanted us to be sad, so we're going to be sad.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as trends, I would say like the whole green, environmentally conscious thing is definitely playing into the death space as well. I mean, um, when you're embalmed, it's kind of like a very toxic thing that goes into your body. So a lot of people don't want that because it's not great for the earth. My
Yeah.
mom, for example, she didn't want like a traditional casket, so we got a wicker basket from a place in California that we shipped to New York
Hmm.
because it was better for the environment, and she wanted to be in a green burial site, so those exist. Some of them,
Wow.
like you don't even have like a plot where you're put in and buried. You're kind of just like they put your body in the ground, and you're just in a field with flowers
Oh, that sounds
and you can't really
nice.
go visit a specific place, but there's just like this field of, yeah, greenery. And I think they have caskets that like are made of all natural things. You can do like body composting. There's a bunch of cool stuff.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
Fascinating.
I've seen also, I haven't been a part of this firsthand, but I've seen through some research and stuff that you can order caskets and then you have like a decorating party. So like you can just like
Wow.
go through and like draw on the casket or decorate it in a way that you want.
Like a
So there's
cat.
definitely a lot of,
Like I
yeah,
love that.
exactly.
Like have a
Yeah,
safe
yeah,
trip.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the or a yearbook. Like keep in touch. Yeah, I love
yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's really cool. I like that. Interesting. Yeah, of course that makes sense. Like the green thing would carry over. So is open casket out? Is that no one's doing open
Um,
casket?
I think people still do a lot of the traditional things.
Yeah.
That's actually another thing that I really the whole topic of death in general, I would love to make people more comfortable on, but then also like understanding that there's other ways of doing things,
Yeah.
um like the body doesn't have to immediately be given to the funeral home and kept there. The body can stay at home for a few days. You can have visitations. Like there's just a lot of
Yeah.
more natural things that we probably did in the past that we kind of stopped doing and we've kind of like pushed death away. Um, that I think are really great and very uh like like a nice peaceful way to say goodbye and not in this rushed, very sterile, formal way.
Right. Yeah, because I remember when my grandpa died, I wasn't there, but my aunt was with him at the hospital and she was like he just died. It was like this moment that she was like holding his hand, and it was like they came in right away and
Mhm,
started. They're like, okay, like nothing to see here, and and I don't know how much control you have over that in a hospital setting, but is just it was very abrupt and very um like devoid of emotion or sort of and I mean you
mhm.
can't blame them. They have a job, they're at work, they have a job to do, you know,
Yeah.
rooms are valuable or whatever, but like for the person, experiencing that, it's so harsh and when you're just in this moment of kind of not shock, like we knew it was coming, but of just, grappling with the reality of this person being gone and then having it just be so businesslike. And then it's like you have to
Hmm.
plan the funeral, you have to tell everybody, there's all this paperwork to fill out, and then and that's just like right away. And then you have to do all the paperwork for the financials and report to Social Security that, like there's just so much administrative burden at that time that I think
Hmm.
it's only natural that a lot of people would be in this kind of almost like survival mode until that's resolved and then feel whatever they have
Hmm.
to feel because you get so busy in this sort of traditional model of afterlife care.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I totally agree with that. And that was I feel like I keep talking about my mom's death, but I think it's very relevant to kind of the opposite way that you can do things. She died at home and really, really wanted her body to stay at home for 3 days. And so
Mhm.
we that was why we worked with a death doula because my dad and I and my brother didn't know how to like do that. Um,
Yeah.
so she came in and showed us how to put dry ice on the body. And so we only ended up
Wow.
doing 2 days because it was quite a lot emotionally to just like have that happening.
Yeah.
But that part aside, it was really nice to have all of her friends and family were able to come over and spend time in her room with her one on one. Someone came and played the flute, like people came and sang. It was just a
Wow.
very like peaceful and spiritual kind of time frame that people could come say goodbye to her. And we did the day that she died, we did a body cleansing with a couple of her sisters and like me and a couple of her really close girlfriends. And we just kind of washed her body and we said like thank you to her body for everything that it had done for her her whole
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
Um, put some makeup on her and like had flowers. So it was just like this very I mean, it was my first experience with death, but I had seen lots of movies and it was just so different from what you would typically think of. And so, like, more, like, I would say that was beautiful. And I wouldn't necessarily compare like normal a death and a funeral as beautiful, really.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
And I'm just curious because you're describing this sort of environment and atmosphere where people who loved her and remember her and music, like did you feel her presence in that time?
oh, I don't know. I think honestly, yeah, but like I feel like I was a bit in shock of the whole thought of like I remember coming home and I got there about 30 minutes after she had passed and she was still warm and I just remember like I mean obviously you're kind of in shock because like you're like holy shit my mom just died but like my dad was holding her hand and he's like you can touch her and I was like so scared to touch her.
Yeah.
So it was like my first experience with a dead body, and then it was my mom on top of that. So I honestly don't know if I felt like I had the mental capacity to like feel if she was there. What I
Yeah.
do know is that everything that happened, she would have like absolutely loved, and like it was
Aw.
all exactly what she would have wanted. So
Mhm.
that part of it I feel really good about. Um, Yeah, it's that's kind of a sidebar, but the whole idea of like, do I feel the death or the dead still here after, and like, what does that mean to me is kind of a something I'm still like grappling with in the last
Mhm.
5 years. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
she would have said she was there for sure.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome. I have one last question for you, unless there's anything else you want to add, but what is your death plan?
so I actually did a death plan with a death doula that recently started in the last year as well, and we were just networking and decided to kind of like do our death planning things on each other. Um, but yeah, as I said earlier, like I don't have a ton of things that I really feel strongly about. For me, I would like to be like comfortable and not in pain and present, like towards the end of my life. And then I think I just really want my whoever, if I'm with my current partner still, like whatever he wants, if I have kids, whatever they want, like I want them to feel like honored, like they're doing what feels right to them. So that's
Mhm.
probably more important to me. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm living in France now, so ideally I would be buried here or cremated. I don't have too much of a preference. I like the idea of a green burial because it just seems I love plants and nature, so that just seems fitting to me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, nothing too crazy. And I don't want people to be sad either. Like I want it to be like a celebrate my life and like yeah. I think another thing that I ask people in their death plan when we're planning is like how they want to be remembered in the future on death anniversaries or birthdays or anything like that. Is there a specific thing they want people to do for them or on their behalf? Um, and I think that's nice too. Like my mom loves cinnamon buns, so like every year for her birthday, I'll go have a cinnamon bun in her honor. Um, so
Was
yeah, I like
that
the idea
something
of
she wanted, or that's just your way of, okay.
it's my way. I don't think we asked her like how she would want to be remembered or celebrated. So that's kind
Yeah.
of why I added the question in because I was curious. Um, but yeah, like for me, I'd be like, oh, go out and have a drink or like just like do something fun for yourself that day. Like that would be a nice way to honor me, I think.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that because a lot of times death anniversaries are very loaded for people, right? It's
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
a week or a month going into it. It's like this was the time, this was the, and that grief can resurface, which is also fine and part of the process. But I like the idea of sort of like almost making it something to look forward to. Like I'm gonna get my Cinnabon, or
Yeah.
cinnamon roll or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that kind of tempers or brings something positive around it instead of this sort of like dread of like, oh, it's this time again that always like is so hard for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, exactly.
um, um, Well, thanks so much for talking about death. We'll share the links to the resources you mentioned. Um,
Yeah. Um, yeah, I can send or I'll give you my website, which has some free resources as far as like end of life planning
Great.
checklists that you can look at.
Awesome.
Um, and then if anybody listening has social media, I do a ton on Instagram. So I feel like for me, that's like the most present place I have free stuff on, where I'm always just kind of posting things to be thinking about. Yeah, so I would, if you're on Instagram, that can be a good free resource as well.
What's your handle?
It's at Plan Big Sleep.
At Plan Big Sleep. You can find Emily. You can find Brooklyn Plans, the company that I founded on our website, brooklynplans.org. Sign up for our newsletter. We're not big on social media, but we're big on sharing content with our mailing list. Um, and if you want to work with a certified financial planner, to address all things finances. We're your people. And if you want to talk death planning for yourself or for loved ones, Emily's your go-to there. Thanks so much for having this conversation with me. And
Thank
it
you.
turns out there's never a bad time to talk about death. This was lovely, delightful, actually.
Exactly. It's fun. It's not so bad after all.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.